My name is Martin Klaassen and welcome to the very first episode of Light Talk, conversations with experts in their field. My very first guest is no other than Richard Offen, who is the former CEO of Heritage Perth. And he was instrumental in bringing us in to do the facade lighting of His Majesty's Theatre in Perth, a landmark theatre that is known to everybody here in Perth. It was a really interesting conversation where we delved into how it all came about, the challenges that we had along the way. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this very first episode, because Richard is not only the CEO of Heritage Perth, he's also a broadcaster and a writer, so he has a lot to tell. My name is Martin Klaassen, and today we're having a special edition of Light Talk. We are in a very famous place called His Majesty's Theatre. For this I've invited a very special guest, Richard Offen. Richard, welcome.
Thank you.
Richard was the one who got us involved in this project to do the lighting of the facade. And Richard was formerly the chief executive of Heritage Perth, also developed the Light Up Perth program, instrumental in that, and besides that he's also an author and a broadcaster. So that's really interesting. What I wanted to do is have a nice chat with you about the challenges we had all along the way to get this to where it is today. It took a very, very long time. So Richard, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start at the beginning. Some 5 years, maybe for you even longer.
Even longer ago than that, actually, yes.
There was this requirement or request to look at lighting this building. Tell me a bit how that came about.
Well, Heritage Perth was set up by the City of Perth. It's still running, of course, and an independent organisation that was set up to promote the history and heritage of the city. And when I came here in 2001, really and truly, heritage was quite a bad word. Yeah. It was something that was impeding developers, thank goodness.
It still is in a way.
It still is in a way, yes. It was impeding development, people felt, but there was also a groundswell that was protesting that all of the beautiful old buildings like this one were being spoilt and demolished, as many were in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Right. So Heritage Perth set about telling people what they've got. You always need somebody from outside to tell you what you've got and explain to people that we do have a very, very long history, 50,000 years of Aboriginal history here. And the colonial history, which started in 1829, is fascinating because it was a pioneer state. There were lots of people trying to do lots of different stuff here. And in promoting the heritage of the city, we wanted to highlight the buildings that were of heritage character, those that were listed on the state heritage list. And we came up with the idea, and actually I sort of copied Paris and Liverpool, who have had long projects to light all of their historic buildings, a rich history and a rich history of trying to light them, and thought we could do this here. So we got a grant from the City of Perth to give grants to building owners to light their facades. And the first one that came out of the Light Up the City project was Wesley Church.
Yes.
And
we also were involved.
That's right. Yeah. And we had a grand opening for that, and it worked. And then we started to work with other owners. And my private ambition was to light this building because His Majesty's Theatre, which opened on Christmas Eve 1904, is one of my all-time favourite buildings in the city.
So nice,
it's a gorgeous piece of architecture. It's the most beautiful theatre in the world as far as I'm concerned. And it was sitting very inauspiciously in Hay Street with no particular lighting on it, a little bit under the canopy, and that was it. I think it used to have a lighting scheme, but it was a bit over the top many years ago.
We did try and look a bit and find, but we never could find some good pictures of anything that sort of highlighted that. No, we were always surprised that there wasn't really.
Yes, exactly. So we worked with the Perth Theatre Trust and the then managers of the Theatre Ogdens, and slowly but surely, and these things do take a time, we had lots of, it's going to be done, no it's not. Something would always come up that meant that budget had to be put somewhere else, you know, a new, a new fire system or whatever. But eventually, we got to the stage where they said, we must do it. The theatre was undergoing a large refurbishment, and it was felt that it was the ideal opportunity. And actually, I'm really glad that we waited, because lighting technology has come on by leaps and bounds in the last 10 years. And as a result, I think we've got something that is far, far better than had we carried out the project 10 years before.
I don't know what people realize, but when we originally specified the lighting, we had version 1, so to speak. Over the years that we moved on and developed the concept and the lighting specifications, we changed 2 times. We upgraded. It's like your mobile phone. You have your iPhone 6, iPhone 7. It's the same as with lighting today. And by the time we actually got to installing it, we were at version 3 already. So it's a very valid point,
And I think the important thing is that a lighting scheme for a heritage building like this has got to allow the architecture to speak for itself. Just make it visible at night, subtly. Not like in the early days of floodlighting a building, which was literally what it was. 2 big lights on it and everything is brighter than daylight. Now, your design for this is beautifully subtle, you can change the colours, and it really makes the architecture speak to you. I think probably even better than it does during daylight hours.
It's definitely a new experience when people come at night. But you know what the best compliment for me is? If there is no compliment. Because it feels natural. If people come there and look at it and they see it as a totality and not like, whoa, the lighting is this. No, you come in there and you see, wow, this feels so good. It feels like it's supposed to be there.
That's it.
And that was the aim really of the design also, to be inconspicuous, really integrated. And when you come in there, you're like, wow, this looks nice. And you're not talking specifically about the lighting.
No,
it's the
whole
totality.
Entity.
Exactly.
And it, as you say, it just enhances. It doesn't say, hello, I'm lighting this place. And that it's subtle in its approach. And with the uplights that go up the columns and things like that, it just, I've never really seen that column like that. And it just helps you to read the building.
So you're a heritage expert, but we also got in Phil Griffiths, who was the heritage architect. So what is the role really of the architect to preserve? Because one of the things that we had to do is make sure that we were not affecting the fabric of the facade, and so we had a whole design process to make sure that cabling and where we had to go through the wall to get cabling that were minimized. What is your view on this?
That's right. It needs to be done carefully, because we're dealing with a historic building, and buildings have to be adapted to make them useful for modern day. Otherwise, they might just as well be demolished, because if they're just a museum, and this is a working theatre, therefore all of the modern safety equipment has to be in here, lighting on the front. But we want to protect and preserve as much of the fabric as possible. So a conservation architect is vital to a scheme like this, to make sure that you're not going to drill holes every 2 inches along the facade or take great chunks of masonry out to get your cables through. And it's been done beautifully and subtly. The little lights that you can see float with nothing around them. So has it got a cable? Is it a battery one? No, it isn't.
In the end, we never went through a wall at all. We used the little balconies. We used the canopy to put in the lights. In fact, we have no lights fixed to the facade at all.
That is even better, because of course fixing to a facade is causing damage. It inevitably has to happen on occasions. You have to have a few screws and raw plugs. There was a time when it was recommended that gluing things to the facade was the best because it didn't drill holes in. But then suddenly, when they realised that the fitting had to be replaced, the
Half
glue
the
has
facade
set.
comes off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all know that at home when you put blue tack on the plaster and pull the blue tack off, and half a wall comes down with it.
Yeah.
So it is important that you minimise the amount of fixings, and you've clearly done that very well here. But I'm fairly pragmatic about these things. The adage is do as much as necessary, as little as possible, and that's the mantra for all adaptations of buildings.
Keep it simple. Yes.
It always makes things easier in the long run.
But it's sometimes the most difficult to achieve.
Oh yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And requires a lot of planning and a lot of careful thought before you start touching anything.
Maybe that's why it took 5 years.
I think it probably is.
But I must say, one thing we didn't have an issue with was power.
Yeah.
Because of a theatre, there's so much power available here for the stage and everything that was none of our concern. But interestingly, do you know how much power we actually use for the facade?
I know, because it's LEDs, it's very small.
But have you any idea?
No.
It's less than 1 kilowatt.
Good heavens.
For the whole facade.
Yeah.
Which is amazing considering the size of the facade, considering what we have been lighting up.
Yeah.
We were very proud to be able to achieve that, because some of the lights are only 3 watts, 15 watts.
Yeah.
It's really little. And on top of that, there's also within your Light Up Perth program, there's some guidelines about how much wattage per square meters we have to use. We were way below that.
Yeah.
So we were quite proud to achieve that as well. Yeah.
For domestic purposes, that's less than 1 kettle worth of water being boiled, isn't it?
Somewhere
it's
around
incredible.
there. Yeah.
So,
no, it's quite an achievement.
And that was one of the things that when we set up Light Up the City, was we had a bar, a specification, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be environmentally unfriendly, and that we were going to use megawatts of power to light these places. So we set maximums for the wattage per square metre.
I think it's really good.
And of course, with this modern equipment that we're now using, it goes nowhere near the specification that we set 10, 12 years ago.
But still what you put in there is quite good. It's quite rigorous.
Yeah.
And this was, in the end, it was not too difficult to achieve. I mean, when you look backwards, you think, it was easy. But of course, it took a lot of sweat and tears before we got there.
Yeah.
But it's something that people don't realize. When they see it, they don't realize all those thoughts that went into it to reduce energy. People just see it and they may think, there's a lot of energy. But
they assume we're creating a huge carbon
but they don't
footprint.
realize, and it's a story that sort of needs to be told as well. And when we submit this for lighting awards, for instance, this is the story that comes with it, because that's part of the big achievement: budget and cost, budget and energy.
Yeah,
that was really plus the longevity of the light fixtures. I don't think there has been any maintenance issues so far.
No.
As far as I know, it has been quite good, right? And that's also the advantages of modern technology. They have like a nearly endless lifetime.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When you think back to, again, as I was saying, those huge floodlights that they used to put on buildings. I know from my days back in the UK dealing with churches, the church I was church warden with, I was forever out changing the floodlight bulbs because they just went pop on a cold night. These days, these run anywhere in the world.
It's fantastic,
very cheaply. And as I say, that was what we wanted for this scheme. We didn't want people to feel that we were draining the world's energy and increasing the carbon footprint by more than we absolutely had to.
So I mentioned already cost. So that was also one of the big things that we came across when we started this. You had a grant available. Once we did the design, the cost came out much more than the grant.
It always does, doesn't it?
So we had to find some creative ways to work around that, which we did by finding a sponsor that helped us in the financing. Tell us a little bit about this whole process of the grant, how that worked, and how we in the end got there.
Well, it was, as you say, it was an interesting one. With the Perth Theatre Trust, we all got together and you came up with a scheme, and we winced and said we can't afford that, because there was a finite amount that we could give. it was, I think, something like 30% of the cost was the maximum that we were allowed to give under our grant criteria. And therefore we had to look around, and I think it was you who introduced us to Igusini, who create, manufacture the light fittings that are used on this
and they're
building.
famous for heritage buildings as
They
well.
are indeed. They've lit almost all of St. Petersburg, haven't they? The heritage buildings there, spectacularly. And they wanted to publicise their work in Australia. And so it was a perfect match. And they came to the party and supplied the equipment at, I think, cost, which drastically reduced the
nearly half.
Nearly half. And the partnership worked, and the result is, I
sometimes
think,
you have to be a
stunning.
bit creative to
You
reach
do.
there.
And you know, several buildings that we went to in the early days of Light Up the City, I'm afraid the owners just couldn't see outside the box. They were frightened that the costs would run away with them. Well, we made sure it didn't, but His Majesty's Theatre had the vision, and I think have always wanted to do this project, to make His Majesty's one of the centrepieces of Hay Street, even more than it ever was, and it's succeeded supremely well.
I think all parties involved really wanted it to happen.
Oh,
Perth Theatre Trust,
from the
yourself,
beginning.
everybody involved, and I think that was also the joy of us working on this, that we all were on the same page. We all wanted this to work. Right, and even when we had to find some extra dollars, we managed to find it. We managed to find it. That's true. Now, the other point that is really important in all that is the quality of workmanship. Cost obviously affects everything, but one of the things that we really wanted to make sure of is that it's not only a nice design, a nice concept, but it has to work. And we need to get people involved that really know what they are doing. And we were very lucky to have a very good contractor who really worked with us, and a lighting supplier that was there for us to service all the visual mock-ups that we did. Because one thing with modern technology, it moves so fast in its development in terms of lighting performance, that what you think you know today is already changed tomorrow. So we did several rounds of visual mock-ups, and maybe some of them you were present, where we actually tested the light to make sure that what we had in mind and the beautiful renderings that we had done also could be realized, and I think that also helped very much to achieve what we have achieved today.
And also part of that were the technical staff here. Because of course it's a theatre. They light it, and they know their job, and they were involved and made some very helpful suggestions. And
they were very much involved, I must say.
Which was great. Again, part of the partnership, and it.
I remember some of them popping out from being in stage and just to come and have a look at what's going on.
Make sure you were doing it right.
No, but they had some ideas themselves.
They did.
Even before I came on board, they already thought of that. Maybe
that's right.
That's correct. That's correct. So today, how is the city of Perth looking at this? Because we have all this lighting now installed, and it's nearly like a normal thing. People just, it's there, it would be nice to understand a bit how that has affected people's appreciation in the city.
It's interesting. There are two things with this. Since Light Up the City and the few projects we did, pretty much every adaptive reuse of a heritage building in the city, the old newspaper house, the state offices, what was the old Treasury building, they all incorporate into the design a lighting scheme for the exterior. The old Palace Hotel is another fine example, which I think you
we
worked
did that,
on. So from the days of, no, I don't think we can afford a lighting scheme, it's now assumed that it's an integral part of the restoration. And of course, we are known as the City of Light ever since John Glenn came over in his capsule, and everybody had left their lights on.
There's a few cities claiming that. I think Paris also. But for this part of the world, we are.
It was, and now we're really fulfilling it. And everywhere has got imaginative and sustainable lighting schemes, and I think that's really great. And I think the interesting thing is that we put a new one online and people go, ooh, and and it's wonderful. But the rest of the time, they just take it as read and enjoy the ambience. And of course, it's increased the safety of the city because you've got extra lighting,
Good point, yes.
which makes people feel safer when they're out at night.
Yes.
And this is a very safe city, but
Yeah.
you know, you still things
No, but
happen.
light does help crime prevention. There's no doubt about this. There's a lot of research that proves that. And it was also always part of what we wanted to achieve as well.
Yeah.
That not only it's a beautiful building to look at, but it also provides a safe and pleasant environment for people to be at night.
That's right. And most importantly, I think it's engendered a pride in the citizens of their city. Because when I first came here, they were all a bit, oh, we haven't got much here in the city, it's deadly boring. But today, people are vehemently supportive and
There's more nightlife.
there is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think all of this has helped to bring the community together,
Right.
to revel in and enjoy the beautiful city that we have here, both night and day.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. Do you remember the opening night?
Yeah, I do indeed. Yes.
After all these years of working on it, it was kind of a relief that we actually got there.
I think it was celebration and relief, but wonderful. It was the opening night of an opera here, which was
50
absolutely
years
great.
of the WA Theatre, opera,
50 years of the WA Opera Company, and a new lighting scheme, and we all stood outside holding our breath, and of course, it worked.
It made the 6 o'clock news.
It made the 6 o'clock news, and it's not
No,
often.
it was specifically, I felt it as a relief. We're finally, after all these years, we've gone through all these steps and all these challenges along the way, and finally it was there.
And let's be honest, we did both have a couple of glasses of champagne on the strength of it, didn't we?
We did. But that was merited, I think.
Yes, I think it was deserved.
So, where do we go from here? What is there any things on the horizon in Perth? Are there some new projects that maybe based on this, on the back of this? I mean, you mentioned already Palace Hotel and the Treasury Building that have already an incorporated lighting scheme. Are there more things on the horizon? I know you're semi-retired.
I'm semi-retired, so I don't know.
Knowing you never stop.
No, I don't. I think you can assume quite safely now, wherever a heritage building in the city is being restored, lighting will be part of the project, because people have realised from Wesley Church, His Majesty's and various other places that have done it already, the fantastic GPO building in Forest Place. It can be done, it doesn't have to be expensive. Boy, what an impact it makes. So I think in future, the lighting of the city facades, particularly the heritage ones, is in good hands.
I think it's very nice to know that we have at least contributed to something like that.
It's very exciting.
Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.